big news.
I'm listening. What do you got?
Critics and parents agree. Paw Patrol, the mighty movie, is hilarious, action-packed, and fun for the whole family.
How do you like me now? That's what I'm talking about.
Paw Patrol, the mighty movie, rated PG, now streaming on Paramount+.
This is Matt Kennedy from the XRadioX podcast, and you are listening to my weekly mixtape, the Punk Covers Edition. Let's mix it up.
Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Joining me tonight as guest curator is Matthew Kennedy, co-host of the XRadioX podcast. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape.
I am super excited. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure's mine, and I'm going to start by asking you the same question I ask every one of my guests. Matt, what does the word mixtape mean to you?
You know, and I've listened to the show, so I should be prepared, but it means so many things. It's like wearing a band t-shirt. It's like having a tattoo of something on you. Like, it's a way of representing the things you care about, the things you think about, the things that mean something to you. It's a way of kind of putting that into a medium and saying, here, I'm going to give this to you. I want to see what you think of it. I want to share my feelings about this with you, or I want to share my feelings about something else, and I'm using this as a way to do it. It's especially when I was younger, like, it was a tool that I used for almost every situation. And it was something that I could do to either work out my own feelings about something, or it was something that I could do to express to somebody else, this is where I'm coming from. And it wasn't always about, romance or anything like that. It was about, this is what I do to get pumped up. This is what I do to just kind of chill. This is what there's a way to do a mixtape about virtually everything. And nowadays, I have to admit, I don't have a cassette player. I have one in my workshop downstairs, but I don't make mixtapes. I still make some mix CDs from time to time, but less and less people even have CD players. Have you noticed that?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So, like, I still buy CDs. I know you buy CDs, but when you make a mix CD, you have to find someone who actually has a CD player. So now we go down to playlists and making Spotify playlists. And my Spotify, I have like easily 30 playlists running just for my own personal benefit. But it's a nice way to it's the future of the mixtape, if you will. You can send somebody, here's my Spotify playlist about this situation. And it's not the same, but at least you can continue that process if it's something that worked for you.
Right. And what I like about your thought process here is you're putting the songs into these playlists in a specific order. The thing that I want to try to drive listeners away from is just grabbing a bunch of songs, throwing them into that playlist and hitting shuffle, putting the thought behind how the songs tie together. And you and I are taking that challenge tonight to punk rock cover songs, something that I know you at XRadioX, you and Jace are big fans of, because you have done some fantastic cover song episodes. And I'm really excited to dive into some punk rock covers with you tonight. How tough was it for you to put together a list of songs to choose from?
It was very difficult. I luckily have, again, a Spotify playlist that I have been building for over a year now of punk and ska covers, and I have a lot of them on there. There's so many to choose from. And honestly, some of them I'm not even like a huge fan of, but I keep it because I want to know that it's there, and I want to be able to reference it, because I'm sort of as you are, a collector of music. And so, going through the songs that really hit me and really make me excited about the cover, and there's a reason for it, and there's a reason why I enjoy it. Getting through those was tricky, because there's a lot of them, and there are some bands that almost every song they have I could include on this, and so it was tricky. But the nice thing that makes it even more tricky is that it's interactive now. So it's a way to engage with you, and we can work on it together, which is really fun, but also kind of, I don't want to say nerve-wracking, but it's different. It's a different challenge.
Yeah, we have to have a conversation through these songs because we're not just throwing random songs together like a draft style,
Right.
if you will. This is the order you're going to listen to this playlist in when we post it at myweeklymixtape.com. You're going to
Yeah.
hear what Matt and I come up with. And we could either get it really right or really wrong, depending on how the fellow mixtapers go. And that's where the fun lies.
I know it's going to be full of good music. I know that. But how it flows will be up to the future.
Well, then let's get down to that future right now. Tonight, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Matt and I will be curating a punk rock cover songs mixtape, and we're going to use that old cassette deck approach, meaning our mixtape will be broken up into two sides, side A and side B. Matt, as my special guest, will begin side A with his first song choice, and then I'll add a song that I feel best follows up that choice. We'll then flip-flop choosing songs until we've mapped out 10 songs for side A. We then give our mixtape that proverbial flip, and we map out side B, only this time I kick things off with Matt choosing second. Our overall goal for this episode is to craft the best punk rock cover song mixtape possible through only 20 songs. At the end of the show, you can take our conversation to the next level by visiting the punk rock cover songs page at myweeklymixtape.com, and you could give our final mixtape a listen via the embedded playlist. And if you like what you're hearing on My Weekly Mixtape, please consider becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. And a few of our Patreon mixtapers chimed in with what they feel would best kick off a punk rock cover songs mixtape, and I'd like to shout a few of those out right now. Kevin Seeker chimed in with Me First in the Gimme Gimme's cover of Blondie's Heart of Glass, as well as the Ataris cover of Don Henley's The Boys of Summer. Cactus Pete chimed in with Wake Me's cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. Ben from the Too Vague podcast chimed in with Screeching Weasel's cover of Tiffany's cover of Tommy James and the Shondells, I Think We're Alone Now. I wanted to make sure I put that in there because obviously Screeching Weasel was probably going after Tiffany's version, but I didn't want to not point out that Tiffany's was a cover in and of itself. And Mally Hart chimed in with Pinhead Gunpowder's cover of Thelma Houston's Mahogany. Now, before I turn it over to Matt to reveal his track one, some of the fellow mixtapers who follow me at My Weekly Mixtape on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Spoutable have chimed in with their ideal opening tracks. So I want to give a few of those a shout out. John Porable chimed in with Dead Kennedy's version of Johnny Paycheck's Take This Job and Shove It. Amanda Myers also chimed in with the Dead Kennedys in their cover of Elvis's Viva Las Vegas. Billy Goodhart chimed in with the Dickies version of the Moody Blues Nights in White Satin. Steve Moore chimed in with Down by Law's version of the Proclaimers' 500 Miles. Jim Santora chimed in with the Circle Jerks cover of Creedence Clearwater Revival's Fortunate Son. Gavin Colopy chimed in with the Clash's cover of Vince Taylor's Brand New Cadillac. Nevin F. Dobry chimed in with the Dropkick Murphys cover of the FU's Warlords. Corporate Gorilla chimed in with the Descendants cover of Buddy Holly's Everyday. Bill Tucker from A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast chimed in with Me First in the Gimme Gimme's cover of John Denver's Country Roads. The Prisoners of Rock and Roll podcast chimed in with Social D's cover of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. Seven Rock Lists from Australia is going Aussie with Body Jar's version of Simon and Garfunkel's Hazy Shade of Winter. Jay Hall of the Okie Bookcast and Jen Cohen both chimed in with the Ataris cover of Don Henley's The Boys of Summer. Jason Whistle from the It's Not That Bad and There Can Only Be One podcasts chimed in with High Standards cover of the Mamas and the Papas, California Dreamin'. Simon Evans chimed in with Real Big Fish's cover of Aha's Take on Me. Molly Ty chimed in with the Ramones cover of the Ronettes' Baby I Love You. Lazy Supper chimed in with 7 Seconds cover of Nina's 99 Red Balloons. Sergio Alonso chimed in with Limp Bizkit's cover of George Michael's Faith. Doozer chimed in with Pennywise's version of Benny King's Stand By Me. Big Dave chimed in with Big Wig's cover of the theme from Cheers. Bobby chimed in with Motorhead's cover of the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen. Hutch chimed in with the Living Ends cover of Soft Cell's Tainted Love. Alvin and the Angry Barrels chimed in with Lars Fredriksson and the Bastards cover of Billy Bragg's To Have Not. Amy Borchin chimed in with Thrice's cover of Real Life's Send Me an Angel. Buffalo Retro Gaming chimed in with NoFX's cover of Fleetwood Mac's Go Your Own Way. Doug Miller chimed in with the Lemonheads cover of Simon and Garfunkel's Mrs. Robinson. Benny Burrito chimed in with the Sex Pistols cover of Frank Sinatra's My Way. And both Philip Bergman and Greg Vorab both chimed in with Joey Ramone's version of Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. Matt, I could tell you right now, the Mixtapers have brought the A game to tonight's episode.
Wow, that would make a good tape right there. All of those choices.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. And those are just scratching the surface of punk rock cover tunes. So with that, Matt, I'm officially pressing record on our mixtape, and the floor is yours. What song would you like to kick off side A with?
So this is going to have a little bit of history to it. When I was a college radio DJ, I was nearing the end of my tenure there at Radio X in Northern Michigan University, and we had our last all request Saturday night show that we were going to do before I was done being a college radio. I was moving on. I was working in commercial radio, and all the fun of college radio was kind of waving goodbye to me. And one of the songs that I wanted to make sure I played during the last show was Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, because the theme of that song was just, tonight I'm going to have a good time. I mean, it was just like, this is it. Let's just have a blast. And so track one for me is going to be the Vandals cover of Queen's Don't Stop Me Now from the Hollywood Potato Chip album of 2004.
What an awesome story, and what a great way to kick things off, because the Vandals are real old school 90s, 80s punk. I love it. It's not that pop punk, which I'm sure we're going to get into at some point tonight, but we're staying with a little bit of the classic punk sound. And I think I know exactly what I'm going to follow that up with, because for my first song of the night and the second song of this playlist, I want to show the Mixtapers that you and I mean business.
All right.
And when I think of the Vandals, which covering Queen is a hefty task, and they do it in true Vandal style. One of the covers that the band did for their Oi to the World album was a cover of a song that I went to a Catholic high school and was used a lot during Mass, Here I Am, Lord. And they did it in true Vandal style. So,
oh, wow.
I had that on my list, but I didn't know if we were going to go Christmas. So we're not going there, but the Vandals are off the board. And following that up, I want to go big, and I want to take an iconic song like you did with Queen's Don't Stop Me Now and go with an iconic punk version. So with that, I'm going to take us back to 1990 off of Social Distortion's self-titled album. I am going with their cover of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire, because let's just be honest here. Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire is one of the most iconic country songs ever recorded. Period. Yes. And if you're going to do a cover of that, you need to really bring your A game, or else you are destroying a classic. You can't take a goofy stance on Ring of Fire.
No.
And Social Distortion brought their unique punk sound to it, but still maintained the essence of the original. And to me, that is what makes this cover so amazing. They were able to make it a true Social Distortion song, but honor an absolute classic in Ring of Fire. So that is what I am going to follow up the Vandals' Don't Stop Me Now with.
That's a great choice, because I think if you were to ask real music fans to name some great punk covers, I think that would be on the top of a lot of people's lists. It's certainly probably in my top 20 best punk covers. It's iconic. Social D is awesome. And like you said, they just own it. They make it their own. So that's an awesome choice. I'm looking at my songs and I'm trying to think of what would be a good follow-up to a Johnny Cash. This might be a reach, But Johnny Cash is sort of a singer-songwriter troubadour, if you will. I think that what I would like to do is take it in that troubadour direction and go with a Don McLean cover. I'm going to go with NoFX's cover of Vincent.
Ooh, interesting.
It's an amazing cover. It's beautiful. I mean, it's fun. You know, it's still got heart to it. It's a punk song, but it's still got heart, and it kind of freshens that song up for a generation of people who probably never really gave, other than American Pie, probably didn't give Don McLean too much attention, but NoFX just rocked Vincent. And so I would have to say that's a good follow-up.
Well, I love it. You scooped me on NoFX. Obviously, NoFX was probably going to be in this conversation at some point. And
Yep.
I had Go Your Own Way from 1989's S&M Airlines, which was originally recorded by Fleetwood Mac, just because Fleetwood Mac has such an iconic vocal sound, and NoFX is so far from that it really gives it that kind of true NoFX sound, like that real punk. You know what I'm saying with that,
I
right?
do. I think at one point, Fat Mike says, if I could, I would give you my socks.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I love that song. That's a great cover too, for sure. Yeah. I'm sorry that's not going to be on this side.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
And now following up a singer-songwriter cover like that, I don't have a singer-songwriter song. Actually, I do. And I feel like we're already 4 songs into this and we haven't mentioned this band.
It's crazy. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so the fact that we've gotten this far and Me First and the Gimme Gimmes hasn't come up, people were probably yelling at their speakers. So let's give the listeners what they want.
Just get it over with, guys. Just get it over with.
Yeah. Let's let the elephant in the room be. And that elephant in the room is off of 1997's Have a Ball, originally recorded by Loggins and Messina. I am going with Danny's song, the first song
favorite
on a Me First and the Gimme Gimmes album. And it is such a fun cover of, like, not a singer-songwriter, but it had that kind of 70s yacht rock, the original sound. And this is taking that and pummeling it at 100 miles an hour, and that's what I love about it.
I love it too. It's my favorite Me First and the Gimme Gimme song. I was actually going to include End of the Road by Me First and the Gimme Gimmes for one of our closing out one of the sides, because it's End of the Road, and it has one of those what I like to call hey girl moments where they just talk over the music like they used to do in the 90s R&B songs. But that was going to be, I was going somewhere different with Me First, but I'm glad you hit it with Danny's song because that is my favorite of theirs. So,
well, dude, you and I are legitimately, now we don't share these lists.
No.
I had 2 Me First and the Gimme Gimme songs on my list, and it was Danny's song and End of the Road, and I had that exact same thought process to close out a side with, but we were playing chicken with the Me First and the Gimme Gimmes train, and I gave in too early, I guess. But I still love Danny's song anyway, so I don't regret the decision.
Perfect. All right. Excellent. All right. So this is tricky now. Okay. I'm going to go on a slight tangent. Here's the thing. I follow you on Twitter. We chat on Twitter quite a bit, and I know that you are a Tom Petty fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I made sure that one of the songs that had to make it on this mixtape, because it represents you and it represents me, I included Real Big Fish's cover of Won't Back Down.
Yes.
Tom Petty song. So that'll be our track 5.
Dude, I absolutely love it. Obviously, Real Big Fish I had in my list. I had other Real Big Fish songs. I had Take On Me from 1988's basketball soundtrack. And I had other Tom Petty covers in my list. I had Taking Back Sunday's You Wreck Me, which was on that Cover to Revolution and Sound compilation. But Taking Back Sunday's got a little bit more of an emo vibe, and I didn't know if we were going to go there.
Yeah, that's true.
And then in the 90s, you also had Everclear's version of American Girl, which at the time had a very punk-esque quality to it, even though Everclear's not necessarily a punk band. So I had those 2 sitting in the wings, but I love it. Thank you for checking off Tom Petty. because that is one of my favorite artists of all time. And Real Big Fish is probably one of my favorite punk ska groups. So now as I scroll through here, what do I go with next? Iconic like Tom Petty.
Oh, tough.
It is. It really is.
Meanwhile, I'm going through my list and checking off songs that aren't going to work anymore.
I know that feeling, man. Okay. I think I know what I'm going to go with here because this is tough because Real Big Fish is a little bit more of their version is definitely more in the ska range.
Very true.
Than the punk.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to take us to a modern singer-songwriter that is, as the kids say, all the rage.
Okay.
And this is a 2020 digital single by one of my favorite modern ska punk bands. And that is The Interrupters covering Billie Eilish's Bad Guy.
That was on my list too. I love that.
Awesome. And the reason I'm putting it in here, I'll just say this, and I might catch some flack for this, but in my universe, The Interrupters version is better than Billie Eilish's version. I 100%. Love this version so much. And The Interrupters are blowing up big time right now. And I'm so glad they are. And I'm so glad I knew them back when. Yeah. And this is one of those, they were already on the way up at this point because they played this when they were out on the Hella Mega Tour with Fall Out Boy, Weezer, and Green Day. And that got them a much bigger audience. But this song, their version, unbelievable.
It's fantastic. It's a great song. It was actually the first song I put on my playlist when I started building this list for this show. It was the very first song I said, this has to be on there. When Billie Eilish's version, the inferior version, came out, I immediately got, I don't know, kind of like a Madness vibe. Like whenever that would play on the radio, I would start yelling out "One Step Beyond" just because it kind of, that tempo kind of fit. And so when the Interrupters did it and they added in the horns and everything, I was like, oh, perfect. They heard what I was hearing and they made it even better. So great song choice.
And now you have the challenge of following that up, though.
Ugh. Oh, man. That was my big zinger. Okay. Let's see. Got the Interrupters. And okay, I can do this. Okay, so again, a little bit of a reach. I'm going to go back to, let's say, 1995. And because the Interrupters have a female vocalist, I'm going to go with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts from the Tank Girl soundtrack doing Let's Do It, which is I can't even remember who did the original. It was back in the 60s, I believe. But she rocks it. She punks it up. She makes it fitting of a Tank Girl soundtrack. And it's full of lots of really colorful innuendos that when you're in college, it's extra cool, but, still cool when you're an adult. So I'm going to go with that to tie in with another female vocalist, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Let's Do It from the Tank Girl soundtrack.
I love that you went with Joan Jett following the Interrupters, because when people ask me what I hear when I hear the Interrupters and I'm supposed to describe them, I said as if you take certain, and I use the word certain because if you say the next band name I'm about to say, people automatically go directly to a sound, and it's not that. Certain aspects of No Doubt.
Yeah.
Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and then the English beat, and put them together. That is what gives you the Interrupters. That is my kind of like, it's like second wave ska, third wave ska, and Joan Jett punk had a child.
Yeah, that's a really good recipe to get there for sure.
So following that up, I'm trying to think of where to pivot from there, because it's going to be a pivot. But what I'm going to do is bring it back to the male vocals.
Okay.
Only I'm going to stick with this female theme we've got going for a few songs here between Billie Eilish, the Interrupters, Joan Jett, and now I'm going to go with a Madonna cover.
Ah.
Now, back in my day, 22 years ago, when I got this on CD, I didn't know this cover was on the album. I was listening to it for the fact that I like H2O. But when the last song on the album, Underneath the Flames, finished, there was a little bit of a pause, like they did in the 90s and the early 2000s. And as you saw, the CD didn't go back to track one, excitement built. And if you patiently waited through that silence, the end result is what might be, for me, my favorite song on the album Go. And it's their cover of Madonna's Like a Prayer. Intense, heavy, starts off just like the original, only with a very punk delivery, very soft. And then it's a million miles an hour. And it is one of the highlights of a great hardcore punk album. So I'm going with H2O's cover of Madonna's Like a Prayer.
You know what? Every time I listen to your podcast, I find at least one song that I either forgot about or I've never heard of. And I don't think I've heard that one. So I'm definitely going to have to give it a listen because that sounds fantastic.
It truly is fantastic. They're not a household name, unfortunately, but around the New York City hardcore scene, they were definitely a band that I heard a lot in this area. And if more people aren't familiar with them, I hope they become, because they're just a fantastic group.
Nice. All right. H2O, Like a Prayer. All right. So Like a Prayer, is that an 80s song or is that a 90s song?
I think it was 89.
All right. I'm going to once again make a little bit of a pivot because the connection is weak. I'm going to say we'll go with the same range of time that the cover came out. And I'm going to go with a Down by Law cover from their Punk Rock Academy Fight Song album. It's the Proclaimers' 500 Miles.
Yes. Thank you.
Super fun. I love what they do with it. I love that they don't even understand all the words and they sing it like that. It's just a really fun, they're having fun playing it. And they're just like, I don't know, we're just going to rock this out. Whatever heaver means, let's just keep going. And it's just a really fun way to take a hugely popular song and make it their own and make it, I think, even more fun. So that's 500 Miles by Down by Law.
Absolutely love it. Was 100,000% on my list. I love that version. Steve Moore, a guy I went to high school with, chimed in with this version as well. It is unbelievably good. And about a decade later, MXPX put out a covers album, and they did a cover of 500 Miles. And a lot of people were talking about it because they incorporated Surrender by Cheap Trick into the mix.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, but it's such a creative cover. I said of Down by Law's cover. And they're like,
right.
What? I'm like, no, really, this has been done before.
Yeah.
Except Down by Law didn't put in the Cheap Trick song. However, when he screams out, and if I haver, whatever that means, I think that is almost better than adding in the whole extra cover song into the mix.
Yeah, I agree. It's so fun. And that the other one is a really good cover too, but this is just, I had to include it because it's just you can tell that they are enjoying. And that's one of the like broader things that I like about cover songs is like when an artist likes the song, you can tell when they enjoy that they're doing it and not just doing it to like mess with the original artist. That when they do it, when people do it for that, it kind of shines through. And when a band genuinely likes the song or at least respects what the song is, then it, in my opinion, makes it a much better cover. And it usually becomes one of my go-tos because you can tell that the band's having fun with it. And I think in this case, they were really having fun.
I could not agree more. And I think I know exactly what I'm going to close out our side with. I had about 3 or 4 songs. And in my head, I'm thinking if side B plays out the way I'm hoping, I could still get all those songs in and still include this one. And this is an iconic song that came out in the 80s. And it was not a punk song, but it was definitely inspired by and has a punk vibe to it. And the band is REM.
Oh.
And I'm going to go with a cover of an REM song by the Suicide Machines that came out on 2001's Steal This Record. I am going with their version of It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine. Because the original has a punk vibe to it. But
Sure.
to be able to speed that vocal delivery up and still get it out and maintain the integrity of the original's
Amazing.
manic presence,
Yeah.
to be able to take that up a notch is not an easy feat. And I feel like they knocked it out of the park with this version. And I know it's not the Suicide Machine's most popular, infamous album, but it's such a damn good cover. And I definitely wanted to close out the side with something big and something that really brought kind of this side to a close. And I feel like It's the End of the World as We Know It does just that.
Perfect. Yep. It was on my list. I'm glad that you did it, because if you didn't, I would have. That was also one of my closing ideas. So good on you for including it. I love that. REM's my favorite band. So I had to have a song that at least somehow linked to REM. So that's a great one.
Fantastic. And that, Mixtapers, concludes side A of our punk rock cover songs mixtape, which consists of the Vandals' cover of Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, Social Distortion's cover of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire, NoFX's cover of Don McLean's Vincent, Me First and the Gimme Gimme's cover of Loggins and Messina's Danny Song, Real Big Fish's cover of Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down, The Interrupters' cover of Billie Eilish's Bad Guy, Joan Jett's cover of Cole Porter's Let's Do It, H2O's cover of Madonna's Like a Prayer, Down by Law's cover of The Proclaimers' 500 Miles, and the Suicide Machine's cover of REM's It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine. Remember to head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've talked about tonight in the mix embedded on the episode page. Now, before we flip our proverbial mixtape over to side B, Matt, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about XRadioX?
All right. So XRadioX is a podcast that my best friend and I put together about basically college radio. We both met at a college radio station, and we are huge music fans, and we cross genres in a lot of different ways. And so we often talk about music. And then after college, we both went into commercial radio for many years, and were either in love with it or jaded by it or both. And so we decided, after we got out of that field as well, we were craving the music discussion and the things that made radio so interesting to us, and the good and the bad. And so we decided, well, this is an excuse for us to get together, to talk about radio, to talk about music, to kind of share our knowledge of radio, music, college radio, that whole different niche of subject matter, and to share it with people and see, if people might be interested. And it's super fun. I mean, we have a blast every time we talk about, we do cover song topics. We talk about the different genres that you'd find on radio, the formatting and things like that. And so if you're interested in radio, if you're interested in music and pop culture and that sort of thing, then XRadioX is where you might find us. And it's a good time.
It most certainly is. I love listening to the episodes. You guys have a fantastic product over there.
Thanks, man.
And I am excited to be talking music with you tonight, especially cover songs, because your cover songs episodes are some of my favorite that you guys do, because I'm always finding myself screaming at my car radio saying, why haven't you mentioned this one yet? And I love those type of conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what I'm hoping we're getting a little bit from other people tonight. Maybe not yelling so much, but,
no,
trying to nudge us in the right direction. And hopefully they've nudged me in the right directions, because kicking off side B, I'm going to go with a cover of a 1980s song that I feel like the 1980s song is iconic. However, depending on what generation you ask, the Atari's 2003 cover might be the one that's more iconic. And I'm going with The Boys of Summer, originally done by Don Henley. Instead of the Deadhead sticker on the Cadillac, you have the Black Flag sticker on the Cadillac. I absolutely love their version, because it's everything I love about punk versions. It honors the original and it kicks it up a notch. I know that's like an Emerald catchphrase or whatever, but it really, the Atari's version brings the energy to an already energetic 80s song, but it
Yeah.
totally does not sound like an 80s song anymore. The Ataris bring it and make it their own. So love that version. Love the energy. When my band covers this song, depending on who the audience member is, I will actually say Don Henley's Boys of Summer or the Atari's Boys of Summer, because depending on the age of the audience, they want to hear two different versions.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, I love that song. I mean, that is one of my favorite cover songs for sure. I think that, like I was saying before on side one, the Ataris get it. They like the song. You can tell they get the mood. They get the subtext. They understand what Don Henley was singing about. It's not just words and music that they have to learn. They know what they're singing, and they make it their own, and they modernize it for their audience in a way that really defines that they are clearly hearing where he is coming from, and they appreciate the song and they respect the music. And so I just think that makes for a fantastic cover.
And now you get the fun opportunity of following it up, because you could follow it up 80s style, you could follow it up punk rock style, depends which way you want to take it.
Yes. So I'm going to go with 80s style, but it's going to be a screeching record of a theme change. So we're going to stick with the 80s feel, but when you go from Boys of Summer to this song, it is going to be a little bit of a jolt, but it's an 80s cover. It's No Use for a Name, covering the Vapors, Turning Japanese.
Nice.
It's such a good song. And I mean, the original is so fun, and No Use for a Name, just they rock it. It's from, I believe they had a full covers album, and it's one of the best ones in my opinion that they had. So No Use for a Name, Turning Japanese from the Vapors.
Great pick. There's something about those 90s punk style covers. They didn't have a home in the 90s because punk rock wasn't on main rock radio at that point, sans your Green Days.
Yeah.
So
right.
These were the songs that were kind of, for at least between my buddies and I, were getting traded through recording CDs onto cassettes that we would get because we were going to punk rock shows and trying to find out more about punk rock bands through people that were kind of in that scene.
Right.
There was no internet to kind of find these songs back in the 90s. So
No
Use for a Name was a band I discovered through one of those tapes.
Yeah, all of my punk knowledge pretty much exclusively I can thank the college radio station I worked at, because there were some punk DJs that had actual full-on 6 hours of punk music, all like top to bottom, front to back. They were immersed in punk culture, and so No Use for a Name was a big one for them. And so I just, through osmosis, because I was always at the radio station, I started listening. I started saying, hey, this is something more accessible than I thought. And so I got into a lot of the punk bands that I still listen to from college radio.
Absolutely love it. And I think I know where I'm going to go with this, because along with those tapes that my buddies and I would record for each other, there was a band that I discovered along with No Use for a Name on one of those tapes. And the band is Face to Face. And in 1994, they put out an album called Big Choice, and they decided to cover a song by one of the most iconic punk bands ever, in my humble opinion, being the Descendants. Oh. And when you're going to tackle a Descendants song, which is already groundbreaking punk, you best bring it to a new level and honor the original with class and respect. And they did that in their cover of Bikeage. I know this is going to be a deep cut, but I'm assuming that there's some people listening to this episode that are punk fans more than cover song fans. So this is my hat tip and shout out to all of those people, because this is a punk band paying homage to another iconic punk band. And I feel like it deserves a place in this conversation tonight.
Okay, yeah, I could hear that for sure. And that's something that doesn't happen too often. You hear every once in a while a punk band will cover another punk band. I know like Green Day has done it once or twice, but like, yeah, it's cool for them to say, here's somebody that really either motivated us or inspired us or whatever it might be. So that's cool. It's a good choice.
And now I throw it back to you.
All right. So we're going to go. What do we have that I haven't used yet? Well, you know what? I have to go with, because we haven't included them yet. It would be weird to not have any Ramones songs on the punk cover list. And so I have to include the Ramones cover, I think from I want to say it was even 1979, California Sun. It's a great song. They just are having a blast doing it. And they've done a number of covers, but that song is, I think, just one of my favorite covers of theirs. So I have to include it.
Great pick. Originally recorded by rhythm and blues singer Joe Jones, but most people knew the original as the Riviera's version.
Yeah.
So I think we can go with that, although even that version it's one of those covers that a lot of people didn't know was a cover.
Right.
And
yeah.
I had the Ramones on my list because you have to go iconic when you're talking about a punk list. And there's certain bands that if we did a punk anything list and you don't mention them, I feel like we would lose some punk cred, so to speak.
Right.
I had their cover of Surfin' Bird by the Trashmen from Rocket to Russia.
Nice.
Because if I was going to put it in, I wanted to do something fun, and it gave me an excuse to shout out the Family Guy episode, which is probably one of my favorite Family Guy moments of all time.
That is funny.
But I am going to follow up the Ramones with another iconic punk band that if we don't include on this episode, we'll lose some punk cred here. And I feel like following up the Ramones is a tough challenge, but the Clash can stand up to that challenge. And I'm going to go off of 1979's EP, The Cost of Living, or for us here in America, the American edition of their self-titled album, originally written by Sonny Curtis of the Crickets and popularized by Bobby Fuller 4. The Clash made it iconic. I Fought the Law, and the law won. Believe it or not, I also had Mike Ness's version of I Fought the Law on my list. But when we're talking punk covers, the Social D cover of Ring of Fire blows away Mike Ness's version of I Fought the Law. And Mike Ness's version of I Fought the Law is awesome. We're talking about the Clash, and the Clash wins out here, following up the Ramones, I Fought the Law.
All right. Excellent choice. So then I'm going to go for track 6. I'm going to take another thematically. This is a band covering an oldie, I think by most people's standards. Even nowadays, the 80s are considered oldies, but a true oldie from Ben E. King. It's going to be Pennywise's cover of Stand By Me from their Word to the Wise album. Such a good song. Pennywise and in fact, it doesn't even start out as a punk song. It starts out pretty true to the original. And then about midway through or so, it starts kicking you in the teeth. But it is such a good, in a way, it kind of shows Pennywise's range, but it's just a really good song that they took, and they obviously care about it. They did a good job with it. And then they also decided, well, you know what? Our fans want us to rock out. So we're going to rock out. And so they did. And it's a great one. Stand By Me by Pennywise.
Absolutely love it. I had Pennywise on my list, and that was actually their cover of Down Under, which you can only find, as I go nerd here, on the Australia and New Zealand editions of their album Straight Ahead. So I give a shout out to Seven Rock Lists, Kevin Seeker, Hutch, and all the other folks down there in Australia, because you guys could probably get your hands on that CD for me. So, men at work, get to work and hopefully find me a copy of that. I've been dying to get that on disc. I love Pennywise. I love their cover of Stand By Me. It's fantastic. Coming out of that, though, is tough because that's like an old school kind of R&B tune.
Yep. Mm-hmm. They made it not suitable for work, though.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to come out of that and kind of stick with these iconic groups we're talking about. So I'm going to go with a real iconic punk band, in my opinion. It's a band that helped set the stage for punk as we know it in all decades. And it's one of their newer songs, however. It came out in the 90s for this band. And I had the amazing fortune with my punk band All at Random to open up for The Damned, Agnostic Front, The Misfits, and the band that I'm choosing for this list, The Dickies, and their cover of The Human Beings, Nobody But Me, from 1998's Dogs from the Hair That Bit Us, or, as a lot of people in America know it, 1998's Basketball soundtrack.
Ah.
If you don't know the song, it's been in commercial jingles, it's been in movies, cartoons. It's no, 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 no. And you take the Dickies punk flair and you add it to this, and it's a recipe for success, and the song kicks ass. And because I got the chance to share the stage with this band, I wanted to find a way to get them into this mix somehow.
Nice. Very good. I love that song. That is a great, and that soundtrack is so fun, the Basketball soundtrack. So that's one of the really good ones from that album.
Take On
sure.
Me is another cover from that. I mean, you had Cherry Poppin' Daddies doing a cover of Jump in the Line, Shake Sonora. That soundtrack was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So for my next one, let's see. I'm going to go with another one that I would have never heard of this band if it weren't for XRadioX. And this was a band that got quite a lot of airplay during the punk shows that would play when I was in college. And it's a band called Buck-O-Nine. And they are doing a cover of Musical Youth, Pass the Dutchie. It's a great song. And I mean, the original is a great song too. But Buck-O-Nine just, they do it Buck-O-Nine style, and it's such a fun cover, and definitely got all of our feet tapping. I think it came out in 1998. I think it was actually on the Pass the Dutchie EP, and had a couple other good songs on it. But that was definitely a song that I would request when I called into the punk show. And they would be like, "Oh yeah, another cover, good one, Matt." And then of course, they would play it for me. So
absolutely love it. And oh my God, you are leaving me with such a tough decision here because I only have one song left.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways I can go. I could follow that 1980s vibe that we have going now with Pass the Dutchie because it was a bit of a turn.
Yep.
Buck-O-Nine was more 90s punk, but I've been throwing in, along with this mix, there's a lot of 90s and a lot of classic artists kind of sprinkled out through this. It's almost kind of like a scale, and we're trying to balance it with 90s punk and classic punk. So I think what I'm going to do is try to balance it with another classic punk band that I feel like deserves to be on this playlist, with a cover that might be more infamous than famous, but if there's only one way to do it, and you're the Sex Pistols, you do it my way. Their cover of Frank Sinatra. I mean, come on.
Yes.
When you talk about punk attitude, Sid Vicious embodies punk rock. And this version, starting off kind of serious and whatever you want to call it, if you want to call that serious in the beginning, starting off slow.
Right.
And just kind of singing it kind of bad and out of tune, and then taking it into a true Sex Pistols punk song. I know there's a lot of controversy around the Great Rock and Roll Swindle and how the label put that album together and everything, but regardless, at the end of the day, this song always sticks out to me for punk covers. And if it's the last song I get to include on this mix, I thought what a perfect kind of pre-exclamation point to the exclamation point Matt will be putting on this entire tape.
Very good.
So my track 9, Sex Pistols, My Way.
Excellent choice. I love that song. It's such an iconic version of that song. I would, if someone gave me the choice to listen to the Sex Pistols version or the Frank Sinatra, I would pick the Sex Pistols every single time. So a wonderful choice. And I'm so glad that you didn't pick the band that it was my last choice for a wrap up song. And so you didn't, thank goodness. But the reason I chose this song for a wrap-up song is, I don't know if you were, this is going to be obscure. I don't know if did you watch Conan O'Brien when he was on TV before he was on like whatever channel he's on now, like when he had a network show.
Yes.
So when he was finishing up his show, there was all sorts of controversy about him getting canceled and being replaced by Leno and blah, 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 blah. And so he went out the way Conan O'Brien wanted to go out, by rocking. And I don't think he played this song, but it was playing as a montage at the end of one of his last programs. It was Cheap Trick's Surrender. And it just kind of encapsulated that sort of feeling of, it's going to be all right. You know, things are changing, things are different. Things might feel nervous and scary, but, you know, it's okay. And so it was kind of a feel good way to end that sort of era of that show. And so it kind of stuck with me like that. And so when I was thinking of songs to finish up a playlist, I thought it would be really cool to use Surrender. So I chose Less Than Jake's cover of Surrender by Cheap Trick for track 10.
Awesome. I was hoping you were going to, I know there's a bunch of, like I even mentioned earlier in the show, MXPX included it with their cover of 500 Miles, but Less Than Jake's at the end of Anthem is a superior cover. I love it.
It's so good. And just the drumming alone is amazing. The fact that the regular version is difficult to do, but then they punkify it, and it's like his arms must have flown right off. It's so good. If you have not heard that cover, you just have to check it out.
Certainly. And I had Less Than Jake on my list, although I went with something that I thought was really tongue-in-cheek, because at the end of the song, even they inject into the lyrics, "Covers are lamey," which is their cover of the Animaniacs theme from 2010's TV EP. I did not see a universe we'd be able to talk about this song on the episode. So just the fact that you scooped me on Less Than Jake and I got to shoehorn that fun fact in. I love Less Than Jake. They're such a great band.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this list, and I think we did a kick-ass job, but there's a lot of bands that I know people are going to go, how did you do a punk playlist and not include ? Question mark. Of
course.
So I could definitely see a volume 2 down the road for this one, for sure.
I would love that. That would be fun.
Well, there you have it, Mixtapers. Side B of our punk rock cover songs mixtape includes the Ataris cover of Don Henley's The Boys of Summer, No Use for a Name's cover of The Vapors Turning Japanese, Face to Face's cover of The Descendants' Bikeage, the Ramones cover of The Riviera's California Sun, the Clash's cover of Bobby Fuller 4's I Fought the Law, Pennywise's cover of Ben E. King's Stand By Me, the Dickies cover of The Human Beings' Nobody But Me, Buck 09's cover of Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, Sex Pistols' cover of Frank Sinatra's My Way, and Less Than Jake's cover of Cheap Trick's Surrender. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear the full mixtape that we have discussed tonight through the playlist embedded on the episode page. Matt, thank you so much for doing this show with me tonight. I had an absolute blast. Why don't you let listeners know where they can find the XRadioX podcast, as well as connect with you on social media?
All right. Well, you can find our podcast really anywhere that you get your podcasts. We're on the Spotify. We're on the Good Pods. We're on the Apple thing. We're on all of those podcast outlets. And if you want to find us at XRadioX1 on Twitter, we try to talk music as much as possible. We love the dialogue and we love exchanging musical ideas, if you will. But Brian, thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a blast. I'm definitely down for a round 2. The challenge is accepted anytime.
All right. We'll get to that very soon. And Mixtapers, thank you so much for listening again. Remember, you can find My Weekly Mixtape on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Spoutable at My Weekly Mixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. If you want to support the show, please consider becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, enjoy the tunes.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.